My wife has one of those doll-like faces, the kind that makes you do a double take at her ID. She's also got the full trifecta of antisocial attributes. She's quiet, seemingly emotionless, and has a permanent poker face. Every morning, she uses her foot to poke my face as an alarm clock, then blankly hands me a caramel pudding for breakfast. I took her to the company's annual gala, where my nemesis laughed at me for marrying a dazed-looking child. Later that night, she appeared in a backless evening gown, and the entire room went silent. She was the daughter of the event's biggest sponsor, the head of Vance Industries. My nemesis tried to hit on her. She stomped her heel through his limited edition sneakers and said, "Stay away from my husband." When we got home, she curled up in my arms. "I need something sweet." I kissed the corner of her mouth. "Pudding flavor." She shook her head, murmuring strawberry. That was all an act. So tiring. My wife, Lily Vance, has the face of a doll, but is perfectly legal. She has maxed out her stats in the 3 no's. No words, no feelings, no expressions. And I mean that literally. Talk to her, and you'll most likely be met with 10 full seconds of silence. Then a nod so slight you'd miss it if you blinked. Or a shake of her head, trying to spot an ounce of emotion on that porcelain doll face of hers. The odds are worse than me hitting the Powerball jackpot. Oh wait, I think I did hit the jackpot once. She was the prize. Morning. Heavy blackout curtains held the sunlight at bay, keeping the bedroom in a state of perfect hibernation-friendly darkness. I was deep in sleep. Suddenly, a cool, soft, and springy sensation touched my face. It felt like being prodded by a piece of chilled jello. Once, then again. The pressure wasn't hard, but it was persistent enough to disrupt my dreams. I forced one eye open a crack. The first thing I saw was a small, delicate foot, so pale it was almost luminous. The toes were perfectly rounded, the nails a healthy, faint pink. The owner of said foot, my legal doll-faced wife, Lily, was lying on her side next to me. She was wearing one of my old, oversized t-shirts. The hem was so loose it exposed a pair of slender, straight legs. She wasn't looking at me. Her huge, dark eyes were staring blankly at the ceiling, as if she wasn't the one poking my face with her foot. As if it were some automated device she had nothing to do with. "Lily," I mumbled, trying to bury my face in my pillow to escape the jello alarm clock. The foot paused for a moment, as if contemplating its next move. Then, with a newfound and undeniable persistence, it began to gently press against my cheek, my nose, my chin. There was no rhythm to it, but it was brutally effective. My sleepiness was completely stomped away. Resigned to my fate, I opened my eyes and grabbed her ankle. The skin was smooth, silky, and cool to the touch. I'm up. "Mercy, Your Highness." Lily finally shifted her gaze from the ceiling to my face. Her big, dark eyes still seemed to be covered by a thin layer of fog, devoid of any real focus. She tilted her head slightly, as if to confirm I was actually awake. A few seconds later, she slowly, deliberately pulled her foot out of my hand. Her movements had a strange, robotic quality. She threw back the covers and padded out of the bedroom, silent as a ghost. I lay in bed for another 30 seconds, staring at the ceiling and gathering my will to live, before finally dragging myself up. When I walked into the living room, Lily was already at the dining table. On the table sat a delicate white porcelain bowl. Inside was a wobbly, golden-brown caramel pudding. The caramel was a perfect, tempting shade, the surface of the pudding as smooth as glass. It was unmistakably her handiwork. Her head was bowed in concentration. With a small silver spoon, she was meticulously scraping the thin, brittle layer of hardened caramel off the top. She worked with extreme care, terrified of damaging the soft pudding underneath. Then, expressionless, she pushed the pile of shimmering caramel shards to the empty seat next to her. My seat. Afterward, she picked up another spoon and began eating the pale yellow pudding, taking small, prim bites. Her face remained a perfect blank, as if she were performing a sacred ritual. I pulled out my chair and sat down, looking at the deconstructed dessert. The crunchy caramel top was mine. The smooth, creamy pudding was hers. This was our strange breakfast pact. "Thanks, Lily," I said, picking up my spoon. She didn't look up, but the hand holding her spoon paused for the briefest of moments, her version of acknowledging my existence. I'm Caleb Hayes, a concept artist at a game studio, as ordinary as they come. My life is a straight line between work and home. The only real excitement is provided by the legally an adult, triple no attribute doll I have for a wife. Life is calm, but never boring. For instance, right now, I was chained to my desk, rushing to meet a deadline when my phone buzzed. The caller ID flashed, Mom. My eye twitched. I had a bad feeling about this. I answered, and my mother's voice, powerful enough to pierce steel, exploded in my ear. Caleb, this weekend, you are bringing Lily over for dinner. No excuses. Your father's old army buddy, you know the Millers? Their son, Jake. He's getting married next month. The invitation just arrived. Look at you. Now, look at him. You and Lily have been married for over a year. You eloped. Where's the reception? The wedding? We haven't met a single one of her friends or family. People who know you think you got married. People who don't probably think you're in the witness protection program. I don't care. This weekend, you bring that girl over and show her off. If you don't, I'll come over to your apartment and drag you both here myself. The barrage was relentless, leaving me no room to interject. Click. She hung up, clean and efficient. I held the phone, listening to the dial tone, my head buzzing. Bring Lily home to show her off? An image instantly formed in my mind. My entire extended family, all my aunts and uncles, circled around her, their enthusiasm dialed up to 11, firing off questions like a machine gun. So, Lily, how old are you? What do you do for work? What do your parents do? When are you two planning on having kids? And Lily, she would most likely be sitting in the farthest corner of the sofa, dressed in her uniform of a baggy t-shirt and shorts, clutching a throw pillow, head bowed. Her long eyelashes would cast shadows on her cheeks, making her look like a small, silent criminal under interrogation. In the face of any question, she would probably offer silence. 10 long seconds of it. Then, a nearly invisible nod, or shake of the head. At most, if they were lucky, she might reluctantly squeeze out a barely audible, or no. The scene was so vivid it made me dizzy. Just imagining the looks on my mom's and my relatives' faces made my vision go dark. This was worse than pulling 3 all-nighters in a row to finish a project. I rubbed my throbbing temples and tossed my phone back on the desk. When I looked up, I saw Lily. She had materialized at my office door, silent as a cat. She was holding an empty pudding bowl, probably on her way to the kitchen to restock her supplies. She leaned against the doorframe, head tilted, her large, emotionless eyes fixed on me. Her face was as blank as ever, but there seemed to be a faint glimmer of curiosity, or maybe she was just wondering why I was making a pain face at my phone. I sighed, deciding to just come clean. Lily. She blinked once, indicating she was listening. This weekend, we might have to go to my parents' place, I said, trying to sound casual. My mom wants to meet you. Lily didn't speak, just watched me. After a few seconds, her long lashes drooped, her gaze falling to her own feet. She was wearing a pair of green ankle socks with little dinosaurs on them. The dinosaur on the left foot had its mouth open. The one on the right was swinging its tail. She stared at her socks for a good 5 seconds. Then, with an almost imperceptible movement, she nodded. Okay. Her voice was as soft as a feather falling to the ground. With that, she hugged her little bowl, turned, and drifted back into the living room, leaving me alone with my computer screen. I felt like I had completed half the mission, but somehow, the burden felt even heavier. The weekend family summit ended as disastrously as I had predicted. The process is not worth reliving. The result was my mom forcing a smile as she walked us to the door. She patted my shoulder, her tone a complex mix of emotions. Caleb, Lily is, well, she's very nice. Very quiet. You two just take care of each other, okay? Next time, come by again when you have time. I could almost hear the monumental collapse of the building in her mind, labeled grandchildren. And Lily, the epicenter of the storm, had been silent as a stone the entire time. She sat in the corner of the sofa, holding a glass of juice my mom had forced on her that she never touched, looking like a high-end animatronic doll that had accidentally stumbled into a human gathering. The only words she spoke were at the very end to my mom. Thank you. Her voice was still whisper-soft. Then she immediately hid behind me, only her eyes peeking out. The drive home was exceptionally quiet. I drove, sneaking glances at her in the rearview mirror. She was looking out the window at the passing city lights, her profile soft, her expression placid. I couldn't tell what she was feeling, but I knew that for her, a social event like that was pure torture. A heavy feeling settled in my chest, a mixture of frustration and guilt. Lily, I began tentatively, was today really exhausting? She didn't turn, her eyes still on the window. A long moment passed, so long I thought she wasn't going to answer. Then, very softly, she said, "Yeah." She turned her head and looked at me. Those usually vacant eyes seemed to have a thin film over them, a hint of unspoken hurt, like a small kitten that had been forced to go on a long walk and was completely worn out. My heart instantly melted into a puddle. Next time, I reached out, wanting to pat her head. "We won't go." She watched my hand approach and didn't flinch. But just as my fingers were about to touch her hair, she quickly turned her head back to the window, leaving me with a view of the back of her head, and, just visible between strands of hair, the tips of her ears, which were a faint shade of pink. Life seemed to return to its normal rhythm. Wake up, go to work, come home. Get woken up by Lily's Jell-O foot. Eat her separated caramel and pudding breakfast. Until that afternoon, our project lead, a portly man we all called Big Mike, waddled over to our section of desks, his beer belly preceding him like a ship's prow. He was beaming. "All right, people, listen up," he boomed, clapping his hands together. "Huge news. To celebrate the massive success of the new Ethelgard expansion, corporate has decided. This weekend, we're booking the main ballroom at the Grand Hyatt for the annual company gala." Big Mike paused for dramatic effect, his small eyes scanning our faces to make sure we were all hanging on his every word. "And the best part is," he announced triumphantly, "this year the higher-ups have graciously allowed us to bring a +1. Did you hear that? Hey, +1. Got a wife? Bring your wife. Got a husband? Bring your husband. Single? Bring your mom, I guess. Point is, I want everyone dressed to the nines, especially your dates. Don't embarrass our team." The office erupted. Cheers, whistles, and the heartbroken groans of the single employees filled the air. I just sat there, stunned. A +1? Bring Lily to that kind of chaotic, deafeningly loud, elbow-to-elbow networking nightmare. The disaster at my mom's house flashed in my mind, along with the look in Lily's eyes afterward that screamed, "I'm so done with this." A cold sweat broke out on my forehead. This wasn't a perk. This was a death sentence. In the cubicle next to mine sat my nemesis, Kyle Jennings. The guy came from money, had an Ivy League MBA, and acted like he was God's gift to the company. He especially looked down on a grunt like me who got by on actual talent. Right now, he was leaning back in his chair, spinning an expensive pen, a smug, punchable grin on his face. He'd obviously heard Big Mike and seen the flash of panic on my face. He let out a short, sharp laugh, raising his voice so everyone could hear. "Hey, Caleb, a +1. What's with the face? Don't tell me you're scared to bring your little wifey out in public." He practically spat the words "little wifey," his tone dripping with mockery. Then again, he continued, stroking his chin theatrically. "I hear she's a little special, right? I get it. A big event like this. Probably not the kind of person you can show off. Tell you what," he drawled, "I can hook you up with someone who'll look good on your arm. Guaranteed to turn heads." A few of his cronies snickered along with him. A hot rage shot through me. My fist clenched, my knuckles turning white. I was worried about taking Lily to a place like that, sure. But it was never because I was ashamed of her. It was because I didn't want to put her through it. Who the hell was this asshole to talk about her? I shot up from my chair, the legs screeching against the floor. The office went quiet. All eyes were on me. I glared at Kyle's smug face, my chest heaving. Just as I was about to lose control and swing, my phone vibrated in my pocket. It was the special notification tone I had set for one person and one person only, Lily. A single, clear chime. It was like a bucket of ice water dumped over my head, extinguishing most of my rage in an instant. I took a deep breath, forcing the anger back down, ignoring Kyle's goading stare and the whispers around me. I sat back down and pulled out my phone. On the screen was a message from Lily. No words, just a custom GIF she'd made of her pet, a British shorthair, so fat we called him Waffles. In the GIF, Waffles was lying on his back, paws in the air, his round belly exposed. A line of childish, scrawled text appeared next to him. Pudding reserves empty. Starving. Next to it was a little hand-drawn bowl, completely empty. I stared at the gif, imagining her sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, hugging that fat cat. Her face a blank mask, but her fingers carefully tapping out this message to demand food. An incredible wave of tenderness washed over me, sweeping away all the frustration and anger from moments before. She needed me. Or at least, she needed me to make her pudding. Or buy it. A small smile touched my lips. I typed back quickly. On my way home soon, Your Highness. I'll get you extra caramel. Her reply was instantaneous. Not a gift this time. Just one word. Concise and to the point. Hungry. Followed by a little drawing of an alarm clock to signify right now. I chuckled. When I looked up, Kyle and his buddies were still staring, their expressions even more mocking. They probably thought I was an idiot for smiling at my phone like that. I put my phone away, completely ignoring them. I felt strangely calm, almost amused. Take Lily to the gala. Kyle wants to see me make a fool of myself? Fine. Let's see who the real fool is. Besides, no matter how unpresentable my Lily was, she was a million times better than a piece of trash like him. As for the gala, I rubbed my brow. It was still a massive headache. But if I couldn't avoid it, I'd just have to face it head on. Worst case, I'd just keep her hidden in my pocket the whole night. The day of the gala, I clocked out 2 hours early. My excuse was solid, picking up my +1. Big Mike waved me off. As I left, I could feel Kyle's condescending gaze burning a hole in my back. Wow, leaving already. Your wife must be a real knockout. Don't let us down. I ignored him, pushing the speed limit on the way home. I opened the door to a quiet apartment. The curtains were drawn, casting the living room in shadow. Waffles, the fat cat, was sprawled out in the middle of the sofa, dead to the world. He cracked open an eye when he heard me, let out a low rumble, and went back to sleep. Lily. I walked inside, kicking off my shoes. The bedroom door was closed. I knocked. Lily, I'm home. No answer. I knocked again. We should get going soon. A few seconds later, there was a soft click, and the door opened a crack. Lily peeked out. She was still wearing her faded, baggy gray hoodie, the hood pulled over her head, revealing only her small, expressionless face. Her hair was a little messy, a few stray strands sticking up. She looked up at me, her eyes clouded with sleep and something else. A rare hint of hesitation. What's wrong? I asked softly. She didn't speak, just bit her lip. Her fingers, gripping the edge of the door, tightened unconsciously. Then, as if she'd made a momentous decision, she opened the door wider and stepped aside, letting me in. Confused, I walked inside. The main light was off, the only illumination coming from a small, warm yellow lamp on her desk. The soft light fell on something laid out on the bed. It was a dress, champagne-colored. It lay there on her pale blue sheets like a river of starlight. The fabric looked incredibly soft and smooth, shimmering with a low, luxurious sheen. The most stunning part was the back. It was almost entirely open, cut low to the small of her back, held together by only a few thin, elegant ribbons crisscrossing each other. The design was breathtaking, with an undercurrent of sensual impact. The dress. I froze, my gaze shifting from the dress to Lily. She stood by the bed, head down, nervously twisting the hem of her hoodie. The contrast between her baggy, gray sweatshirt and the glittering river of fabric on the bed was jarring. This is... My throat fell dry. You're going to wear this? I pointed at the dress. Her eyes flicked up to meet mine for a second before dropping again. She gave a barely perceptible nod. Yeah. Her voice was as quiet as a mosquito's buzz. I looked at her, then at the impossibly glamorous dress, then back at the old hoodie that could fit two of her. My mind was reeling. It wasn't that I thought she didn't deserve the dress. It was... The contrast was just too immense. And a dress that expensive. Where did it even come from? I once bought her a new sundress, and she gave me the, "Why did you waste money on this look for half a day?" Lily, I began, trying to keep my voice calm. This dress. It's beautiful. When did you get it? She didn't answer. She just reached out a slender finger and gently touched one of the tiny crystals on the dress's strap. Then she looked up at me, her eyes seeming to ask a question. "It's pretty," she asked. "It's gorgeous," I said without hesitation. I thought I saw the corner of her mouth twitch upward just for a second. It was so fast it might have been my imagination. Then I'll wear it, she stated, as if that settled everything. Her tone was flat, but it seemed a little lighter. Okay, wear it. I agreed. I didn't care where it came from. If she was willing to wear it, willing to go to the gala with me, that was a victory of epic proportions. I'll, wait for you outside. She nodded. Okay. I stepped out of the bedroom, closing the door softly behind me. I leaned against the wall, letting out a long, silent breath. My heart was still pounding, partly from the shock of the dress, and partly from a vague, deep-seated anxiety I didn't want to examine too closely. Kyle's sneering face floated into my mind. If he saw Lily wearing this. I shook my head, forcing the thought away. I pulled out my phone and scrolled aimlessly. Time ticked by. The bedroom remained silent. Not a single sound. I was getting antsy, but I didn't dare rush her. Nearly an hour passed. Just as I was beginning to suspect she'd fallen asleep hugging the dress, the bedroom door finally, gently, clicked open. I looked up instinctively. My breathing stopped. Time seemed to slow down. Lily stood in the doorway, framed by the soft light from the bedroom behind her. The backless, champagne-colored gown fit her like a second skin. The silky fabric flowed over her slender shoulders, cinched perfectly at her waist to outline the delicate, alluring curves of a young woman, then cascaded to the floor in a pool of quiet, noble light. The most lethal part was the exposed back. A wide expanse of pale, flawless skin was on display, the elegant lines of her shoulder blades leading down to the dip of her slender waist. A few thin, matching ribbons were tied in an intricate knot at the center of her back, making her look like a meticulously wrapped gift, both fragile and beautiful. The body she usually hid under baggy clothes was, in this dress, breathtakingly delicate and graceful. She was barefoot, her small ankles looking like they could snap with a touch. Her normally messy hair was now carefully swept up into a loose but incredibly elegant chignon, revealing the graceful line of her neck and her small, perfect earlobes, bare of any jewelry, which only made them look cleaner, purer. Her face was still blank, perhaps even more tense than usual due to nerves. Her dark eyes, usually misty, seemed exceptionally clear in the dim light, like dusty gems that had been polished. She tilted her head slightly, as if uncomfortable in her own skin, her fingers unconsciously twisting the hem of her skirt. She just stood there, a silent, ethereal creature who had stumbled into the mortal world. She was beautiful in a way that came out of nowhere, in a way that left you breathless. I opened my mouth, but my throat was tight. I couldn't make a sound. The only noise in the apartment was the rhythmic purr of Waffles, the fat cat, sleeping on the sofa. "Is it okay?" she finally asked. Her voice was even quieter than usual, laced with an almost imperceptible tremor of anxiety. It was like a feather brushing against my heart. I snapped back to reality, my heart belatedly starting to pound against my ribs. It's great." I heard my own voice, hoarse and inadequate. I sounded like an idiot. "It's incredible," I added, trying to sound more convincing, but the words still fell flat. She looked at me and blinked. Then, the corner of her mouth did that faint curve just deepen a tiny bit. She looked down at her bare feet. "Shoes," she whispered. "I haven't put on my shoes." "Oh, right, shoes." I smacked my forehead. I'd been so focused on her. I'd completely forgotten. A dress like that couldn't be worn barefoot. "Wait here, 1 second." I practically dove for the front closet, rummaging through it until I found a dusty shoebox at the very bottom. It was from a raffle prize I'd won at last year's gala. A pair of women's heels. I'd almost thrown them out. Thank God I hadn't. I ran back with the box and opened it. Inside was a pair of simple black stiletto heels. The heel wasn't too high, but for her, I wasn't sure. "Want to try these?" I held the shoes out to her. She looked at them, then at me. She didn't take them. Instead, she silently extended 1 foot forward, her small toes curling slightly. The meaning was clear. She wanted me to help her. I froze for a second, then understood. I knelt down and carefully cradled her cool ankle, my touch as gentle as if I were holding a priceless piece of porcelain. Her feet were tiny, her skin flawless. I could circle her entire ankle with one hand. Holding my breath, I slipped the heel on. It fit perfectly. The thin black strap wrapped around her pale ankle, a startling, beautiful contrast. I took her other foot and did the same. Once both shoes were on, she placed a hand on my shoulder and slowly, carefully, tried to stand. Her body wobbled slightly, and I instinctively reached out to steady her waist. Through the silky fabric, I could feel how tense she was. She looked down at the heels, a tiny frown forming between her eyebrows. She seemed to be engaged in a silent battle with the shoes. "Can you walk?" I asked, concerned. She didn't answer, just took a deep breath as if steeling herself. Then, she lifted her foot and took the first step. Her posture was a little stiff, like a baby penguin learning to walk. But she stayed upright. She didn't fall. "Yeah," she managed a one-word answer. The Grand Hyatt was a sea of glittering lights. A massive crystal chandelier refracted a dazzling glow, and the air hummed with a mix of expensive perfume, food, and alcohol. Men in tailored suits and women in flowing gowns drifted through the room, champagne flutes in hand. I held Lily's hand as we stepped into the ballroom. Her hand was cold, her fingers slightly curled and stiff in my palm. I could feel the tension in her entire body, like a fully drawn bow. She walked slowly, each step a careful calculation. The black stilettos were clearly a challenge. I matched her pace, my eyes scanning the crowd like a wolf guarding its cub, praying we wouldn't run into Kyle. Unfortunately, Murphy's Law is a cruel master. We had just rounded a massive marble column when we came face to face with him. Kyle was dressed like a preening peacock in a flashy velvet blazer, his hair shellacked into submission. He had a glass of champagne in one hand, and his other arm wrapped around a voluptuous woman in a low-cut sequin dress that screamed, "I'm expensive." The moment he saw me, his eyes lit up, his face breaking into an exaggerated, theatrical grin. He sauntered over, his date in tow, and blocked our path. Well, Caleb," he boomed, loud enough to draw a few glances. Finally decided to show up. "We were all waiting. Let's have a look," he drawled, his eyes raking over Lily from head to toe with a blatant, appraising stare. He took in her elegant updo, the flawless champagne gown, and the simple black heels. When his gaze landed on her exposed back, it paused for a second, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. It was quickly replaced by an even thicker layer of contemptuous amusement. "TSK." He clicked his tongue, shaking his head as if he'd just spotted a cheap knockoff. "Caleb, my man." His voice dripped with malice. "Where'd you rent this getup?" "The kids' section at a costume shop." "The sizing." He paused, his eyes sliding over her slender frame again. "Seems a little off, don't you think? And having your wife dress like this isn't a little desperate? Or maybe—" He leaned in closer, lowering his voice just enough for the people nearby to hear. "You just have a thing for robbing the cradle?" His date let out a snort of laughter, covering her mouth with her hand, her eyes darting over Lily as if inspecting a cheap toy. The few co-workers watching nearby had expressions ranging from curious to faintly scornful. Beside me, Lily's body went rigid, cold as a stone. I could feel her fingertips trembling, feel her trying to pull her hand from mine. A violent, uncontrollable rage flooded my senses, so intense it made my vision swim. "Kyle, shut your damn mouth," I snarled, stepping forward until we were nose to nose. My voice was a low, guttural growl. "Apologize. Right now. Apologize to my wife." My fists were clenched so tight my knuckles cracked. My only thought was to destroy his filthy mouth. Kyle was startled by my sudden outburst and took a half step back. But seeing my fury only seemed to delight him more, as if he'd finally found my breaking point. His sneer deepened. "Apologize?" he scoffed. "For what? Did I say something wrong? What's the matter, Caleb? Hit a nerve. You bring a little girl like this who's clearly out of her depth to a party, you expect people not to talk." His words grew uglier. The stares from the crowd became more brazen. Lily's hand in mine was ice cold. She kept her head down, and all I could see were her tightly pressed lips and trembling eyelashes, like the battered wings of a butterfly. Just as I was about to throw the punch that would surely get me fired, a slightly older, yet incredibly commanding voice cut through the noise. "Miss Vance, is that really you?" 14, the voice wasn't loud, but it had a strange power that instantly silenced the surrounding chatter and Kyle's venomous words. Everyone, including me, instinctively turned to look. "Our company CEO, Mr. Sterling." a man so rarely seen he was practically a myth, was parting the crowd and walking briskly toward us. Mr. Sterling was in his 60s, with a full head of white hair, but he carried himself with an energy that defied his age. He wore a perfectly tailored, dark gray suit and radiated an aura of immense power. Right now, however, this titan of industry, a man known for his stern demeanor, had a look on his face that could only be described as flattered, almost reverent. He ignored everyone else, his focus entirely on Lily. As everyone watched in stunned silence, Mr. Sterling, a man who never bowed to anyone, actually bent his back slightly. His face was a mask of utter respect and a touch of sycophantic eagerness. "Miss Vance, what an honor to have you here. You've truly graced our event. It's a privilege, a true privilege." He extended both hands in a gesture of welcome, his posture incredibly deferential. "But my goodness, why didn't you let us know you were coming? I would have met you at the door personally. Please forgive our oversight." Mr. Sterling's sudden appearance and bizarre behavior was a bombshell that detonated in the crowd. Everyone was speechless, staring at a scene that defied all logic. Mr. Sterling, our untouchable CEO, bowing and scraping before Caleb's underage-looking wife, saying things like graced our event. What was happening? The sneer on Kyle's face froze solid. His mouth hung open, his eyes wide with disbelief. His date was equally dumbfounded, her hand still covering her mouth as her eyes darted between Lily and the CO. As for me, I was petrified. My brain had short-circuited. I was still holding Lily's hand, my palms slick with sweat. "Miss Vance?" He called her Miss Vance, with that much respect. I slowly, stiffly, turned my head to look at my wife. She still had her head down, the elegant lines of her profile looking cool and distant under the chandelier light. Her long eyelashes hid her expression. Faced with the CEO's effusive greeting, she didn't react with the flustered gratitude of a normal person. She didn't even lift her head. She just gave a very, very slight nod. And from her throat came a single, faint syllable. "MM." Mr. Sterling's hands were still hanging in the air, but his respectful smile didn't falter. In fact, he looked as if he'd just been granted a royal favor. "Miss Vance, right this way." He turned and gestured toward the front of the ballroom, to the most lavishly decorated VIP area. "Mr. Vance specifically requested we have your seat ready. It's right at the front, the best view in the house. Allow me to escort you." The name Mr. Vance hung in the air like a second explosion, causing another jolt to run through the crowd. Mr. Vance? Which Mr. Vance? The only one in this city who could command such deference from Mr. Sterling. A name that was practically a synonym for power echoed in everyone's minds. Vance Industries, the megacorporation that dominated real estate, finance, and tech. The behemoth whose CEO, Marcus Vance, could make the entire city tremble. Could it be that this delicate, young-looking girl in the champagne gown? "No need," Lily finally spoke, her voice cutting through Mr. Sterling's chatter. It was still quiet, but it held a cool, detached quality that was completely at odds with her appearance. "I'm with him." She turned her head slightly, her gaze landing, for the first time, directly on me. Then the small, cold hand I was holding moved. She turned her hand over and, with her cool fingertips, gently hooked my fingers and squeezed. "He's my husband." She said the words clearly, calmly, as if stating a simple fact. But they landed like a silent thunderclap, rolling through the entire ballroom. Every single eye in the room instantly swiveled to me. Shock, disbelief, scrutiny, a toxic cocktail of envy and resentment. I was the center of attention, and I just stood there, a dumbstruck piece of wood, unable to move. My mind was stuck in a loop, replaying her words. "He's my husband. He's my husband. Husband? Who am I? Where am I? My wife. Who is my wife?" Mr. Sterling's gaze also snapped to me, filled with a new level of intense scrutiny, and, after a moment of dawning comprehension, an even deeper sense of awe and enthusiasm. "Well, look at me." Mr. Sterling slapped his forehead, his face splitting into a brilliant grin. "You must be Mr. Hayes. My apologies, my apologies. It's a pleasure. You're a fine-looking man, Mr. Hayes. You and Miss Vance are a perfect match. A match made in heaven, truly." The compliments poured out of him, a relentless flood of flattery that made my skin crawl. I tried to smile, but my face felt stiff. Lily didn't seem to notice. She just squeezed my hand and gave a gentle tug. "Let's go," she said. Her voice was quiet, but it held a note of finality. "Okay," I croaked. Like a puppet on a string, I let her lead me away. With Mr. Sterling fawning over us and the weight of 100 pairs of eyes burning into my back, we walked through the silent crowd toward the heart of power and status. The plush carpet was so thick I felt like I was walking on clouds, each step uncertain, my soul floating somewhere above, watching this bizarre, surreal scene unfold. In my peripheral vision, I saw Kyle's face, twisted with shock and utter ruin, like a stray dog with a broken back. His date was pale, her eyes darting away, desperately wishing the floor would swallow her whole. I looked away from them and toward Lily, who was walking just half a step ahead of me. She held her back straight, the expanse of pale skin a silent declaration of an unassailable status. She walked with a steady, confident gait, her posture perfect, betraying none of the earlier awkwardness in her heels. It was as if the trembling girl from Kyle's insults had been a figment of my imagination. Who was she? The question spun endlessly in my mind. Lily Vance, my triple no attribute wife, the girl who woke me up with her foot and made me caramel pudding, and the heiress to Vance Industries. The two identities were parallel lines that should never have crossed, but here they were, violently smashed together, leaving me dizzy and disoriented, my entire world tilting on its axis. 15. The atmosphere in the VIP section was a world away from the rest of the noisy ballroom. Massive floor-to-ceiling windows offered a breathtaking view of the city skyline. The wool carpet was so thick your feet sank into it. The air was rich with the scent of cigars and fine wine. The few people seated on the large velvet sofas were titans of industry, the kind of people you only see on the cover of Forbes. Mr. Sterling personally led us to an empty sofa in the center. "Miss Vance, Mr. Hayes, please have a seat. Anything you need, just let me know." Lily gave a slight nod. Then she released my hand and, with a practiced elegance I'd never seen before, sat down. Her back was straight, her legs together and angled to one side. The simple black heels rested on the dark carpet like two quiet blossoms. She didn't look at anyone, her gaze lowered, her long lashes casting shadows on her cheeks. She had reverted to the familiar, near-vacuum state of her three-nose persona. The person who had declared "he's my husband" might as well have been a ghost. I stiffly sat down next to her, perching on the very edge of the cushion, my entire body rigid. The sofa was soft, but I felt like I was sitting on pins and needles. I could feel the casual, assessing glances of the powerful people around us. "Lily," I whispered, my throat dry. "Are you really from a Vance?" I couldn't bring myself to finish the question. She turned her head and looked at me, her expression calm. She didn't confirm or deny it. Instead, she reached out 2 fingers and gently pinched the cuff of my blazer, giving a little tug. "Help me." Her voice was soft. I didn't understand. "Shoes." She glanced down at her feet. "They hurt." I got it instantly. Those heels were instruments of torture for her. She had been running on pure willpower. Now that she was in a safe zone, she couldn't take it anymore. Of course, forgetting where we were, I knelt in front of her. I carefully took her slender ankle and unfastened the strap, gently sliding the torturous heel off her foot. Just as I suspected, a small, red-chafed mark marred her skin, painfully bright against her pale ankle. I winced in sympathy. I set the shoe aside and removed the other one. After both heels were off, she seemed to sigh in relief. Her bare toes curled into the thick carpet, like a small animal finally freed from trap. I placed her shoes neatly by the sofa leg and stood up, only to see a waiter standing nearby, staring at us with a look of utter shock, his eyes glued to Lily's bare feet on the priceless carpet. Lily, however, was completely unfazed. She nonchalantly tucked her feet up onto the sofa, hugged her knees to her chest, and curled into a ball in the corner, like a cat that had finally found the perfect warm spot. The champagne-colored skirt pulled around her, hiding her legs, only the tips of her pale toes peeking out. Having made herself comfortable, she turned her head and looked at me. The look in her eyes clearly said, "Okay, I'm good now." I watched her rapid switch back to home mode and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Where was the powerful, intimidating Vance heiress from moments ago, did taking off her shoes instantly revert her to my little doll wife? I resignedly sat back down, the pressure in the room seeming to lessen slightly. At least this version of Lily, curled in a corner, hugging her knees, barefoot, was the one I knew. Just then, a figure reeking of alcohol stumbled toward our sofa. It was Kyle. His face was twisted into a grotesque smile of flattery, fear, and a final, desperate hope. He ignored me completely, his eyes locked on Lily. Miss Vance," he stammered, his voice trembling. "It was all a misunderstanding. I was blind, an idiot. I was drunk, just spouting nonsense. Please, you have a big heart. Don't lower yourself to my level." He was bowing and scraping, his posture utterly pathetic. I'll drink 3 glasses to apologize. No, 10, to say I'm sorry." He raised his glass, ready to pour it down his throat. Lily remained curled in her corner, only half her face visible over her knees. Her dark eyes watched him, cold and detached, as if he were a piece of garbage. There was no emotion in them, only an icy indifference. Kyle froze under her gaze, his glass hovering in midair. The fake smile on his face began to crack. Beads of sweat formed on his forehead. Miss Vance," he pleaded, his voice shaking even more. "Please, just say something. What can I do to make it right? Anything you ask. I swear I'll do it." Lily still didn't speak. Her stare was cold enough to freeze blood. Kyle was panicking now. He probably thought her silence meant she would never forgive him. He slammed his glass down and, as if remembering something, bent over and frantically started untying his shoes. These shoes, he babbled. "Limited edition, just bought them. I know, they're not worthy of you, but please, step on them. Step on them and let out your anger." He finally got the expensive-looking sneakers off and held them out with both hands, like a eunuch presenting a tribute. "Please, step on them, as hard as you want. Ruin them. Just please forgive me." The scene was absurd. A man in a velvet blazer, holding out a pair of sneakers, begging a barefoot girl curled on a sofa. The other VIPs watched with expressions of disgust and amusement. Finally, a tiny frown creased Lily's brow, a clear flicker of annoyance and disgust. She moved, but not to step on the shoes. She pulled her feet further onto the sofa, away from his offering. Then she lifted her head and, for the first time, looked Kyle straight in the eye. Her lips parted, and she uttered a single, clear, ice-cold word. A word of undeniable dismissal. Gross. The word gross hit Kyle like a physical blow. His hands trembled, and the fawning expression on his face shattered, leaving only gray despair. He opened his mouth to say something else, but Lily had already looked away, burying her face in her knees again, presenting him with the silent, unyielding back of her head. The message was clear. Get lost. Kyle was left frozen, holding his shoes, a clown nailed to a pillar of shame. The contemptuous glances from around the room felt like needles in his back. Mr. Sterling appeared at his side, his face grim. He gave a subtle nod to 2 nearby security guards. "Mr. Jennings has had too much to drink," he said, his voice low but firm. "Please escort him outside to get some fresh air." 2 large guards immediately moved in, grabbing Kyle's arms like he was a misbehaving child. "Mr. Sterling, Kyle's struggle was useless against their iron grip. "This way, sir," one of them said coldly, and they half-dragged, half-carried the protesting Kyle out of the VIP area. His limited-edition sneakers fell to the floor with 2 soft thuds, abandoned, just like his now-crushed pride. The area fell silent again. The humiliating spectacle was over, as if it had never happened. Lily remained curled in her corner, still as a statue. I watched her, a storm of emotions churning inside me. I felt a pang of sympathy for her, a surge of satisfaction at Kyle's demise, but mostly a profound and unsettling sense of complexity. Her cold dismissal, that single, cutting word, was a stark reminder that she wasn't just my quiet wife, Lily. She was the heiress of Vance Industries, a person from a world completely separate from mine. That realization felt like a splinter in my heart, a dull, aching distance. As I was lost in thought, Lily moved. She slowly lifted her head from her knees and looked at me. In the dim light, her large, emotionless eyes seemed to be veiled with a thin layer of moisture, like a small, bullied animal. The iciness was gone, replaced by a look of exhaustion and a cautious, searching gaze. She didn't speak. She just uncurled one of her arms from around her knees. Her small, cool hand snaked out from under her dress, found mine, and, with a touch of hesitation, gently hooked her fingers around mine. She squeezed. The pressure was light, but it held an undeniable sense of reliance, as if she were silently asking, "Are you scared of me?" That one small gesture seized my heart. The splinter of distance I'd just felt dissolved under the cool touch of her fingers. I turned my hand over, completely enveloping hers in my palm, and squeezed back firmly, letting my eyes answer for me. "Never." She blinked, her long lashes fluttering. Then she buried her face in her knees again. But this time, she didn't pull her hand away. Instead, she squeezed back. The gala finally crawled to an end. Mr. Sterling personally walked us to the exit, his solicitousness never wavering. We got in my beat-up sedan, the door closing with a solid thud, shutting out the glittering, superficial world we just left. The car was instantly quiet. The first thing Lily did was unbuckle her seatbelt. She curled up in the passenger seat, hugging her knees, turning her back to me to face the window. The smooth, champagne-colored fabric of her dress shimmered in the dim light, rising and falling with her breathing. The stunning bare back was now turned to me, a picture of profound exhaustion. I started the car and pulled out into the sparse late-night traffic. The silence in the car was heavy. After about 10 minutes, I couldn't help but glance at her in the rearview mirror. She was still in the same position, a silent little lump. "Lily," I said softly. No response. Worn out. I tried again. She still didn't turn around, but the arms hugging her knees seemed to tighten. A muffled, nasal syllable came from her direction. "Mm." The sound was soft and weak, tinged with an unmistakable note of complaint. My heart softened even more. "Get some sleep," I said, turning up the heat. "I'll wake you when we're home." "Mm." She mumbled again, her voice even fainter this time. The car moved steadily through the night. The city's neon lights washed over her in shifting patterns of color. She stayed curled up, a little snail that had finally retreated all the way into its shell. When I pulled into our apartment's underground garage and killed the engine, the silence was absolute. "Lily, we're home." She finally stirred, moving in slow motion. She uncurled from her ball and turned to face me. Her delicate face was etched with fatigue. Her eyes were half closed. Her hair had come loose, and the neckline of her dress was crooked. She looked like a wilted flower. "Can you walk?" I asked, worried. She didn't answer. She just lifted her arms toward me, like a small child asking to be picked up. "Tired," she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep and an undeniable hint of a whine. She was a world away from the Ice Queen at the gala. I sighed, defeated by her seamless transition. I got out, walked around to her side, and opened the door. I leaned in, sliding one arm under her knees and the other across her back. My hand landed on the cool, smooth skin of her bare back, and my fingers instinctively curled to avoid touching too much. "Hold on tight," I whispered. She immediately wrapped her arms around my neck and buried her face in the crook of my neck. Her warm breath tickled my skin, carrying her unique, faint, sweet scent like caramel pudding. I lifted her out of the car. She was shockingly light, like holding a cloud. I locked the car and carried her toward the elevator, my footsteps echoing in the empty garage. She was limp in my arms, the long train of her gown swaying with each step. "Next time," she suddenly murmured, her voice muffled against my neck. "Not going." "Okay, not going." I agreed immediately. "Never again," she insisted. "Right, never again," I echoed. Satisfied, she nuzzled against my neck and fell silent. At our apartment door, I fumbled for my keys, holding her with one arm. She clung to me like a koala, showing no intention of getting down. The door opened, and I carried her inside, planning to set her on the sofa. "Don't," she protested, tightening her grip. Her face was still buried in my neck. "Carry me." Her voice was a sleepy, stubborn whisper. "All right, I'll carry you," I sighed, walking into the living room with my precious cargo. Waffles, the cat, opened one eye from his perch, saw us, let out a familiar rumble, and went back to sleep. I paced the living room a few times, her breathing evening out against my shoulder. She was almost asleep. Lily, I whispered. Want me to run you a bath? It'll help you relax. She shook her head against my neck. No. How about something to eat? A midnight snack? Silence. A few seconds later, she lifted her head. Her tired face was inches from mine, her long eyelashes brushing against my cheek. She looked at me, her eyes still hazy with sleep. Want something sweet, she said, her voice soft and a little raspy, with a demanding, childish edge. Okay, sweet it is. We still had some of the pudding she made yesterday. Pudding? Extra caramel? I asked. She looked at me and shook her head. No. Ice cream. Another shake. No. Cake. No. I was out of ideas. Then, what kind of sweet do you want? She didn't answer, just kept looking at me. The sleepiness in her eyes seemed to recede, replaced by a glint of mischief. She leaned in closer, her warm breath ghosting over my lips. Before I could process what was happening, she tilted her head up. A cool, soft, sweet-smelling kiss, light as a feather, landed on the corner of my mouth. It was there and gone in an instant. This, she whispered, her voice a breath of sound, laced with a hint of shyness. This is sweet. I stood frozen, the faint, cool sensation on my lips rippling through me, carrying the sweet scent of the strawberry lip balm she wore. Pudding flavor? I asked dumbly. She looked at me, the warm light of the living room reflected in her dark eyes, making them sparkle like they held captured stars. The faintest hint of a curve at the corner of her lips finally, clearly, blossomed into a smile. She shook her head. Strawberry. Her voice was still a whisper, but it was filled with relief. She buried her face back in my neck, a safe harbor found. Her muffled voice reached me, filled with a tiny, exhausted complaint. That was all an act. So tiring. An act. I stood there holding her, my brain trying to reboot. Strawberry. That was all an act. So tiring. So, the ice-cold, intimidating heiress at the gala, the one who terrified Kyle with a single word. That was a performance? I looked down at the little person clinging to me like her life depended on it, complaining about being tired. Her expensive gown was wrinkled. One of the ribbons on her back had come loose, and her whole body was limp, radiating a low battery warning. There wasn't a trace of the powerful woman from the party. The sheer contrast. A low chuckle escaped my chest, the vibration shaking her slightly. She grumbled into my neck. What's so funny? Nothing, I said, tightening my arms around her. Just thinking. My Lily is a hell of an actress. The Academy owes you an Oscar. She let out a soft huff in response. But, I added, don't do it again. It's too exhausting. It makes my heart ache. She didn't speak, but the arms around my neck tightened. She nuzzled against me, a gesture of pure, trusting affection like a cat. Okay, she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. It's good to be home. Yeah, I said, holding her like she was the most precious thing in the world as I carried her to the bedroom. It's good to be home. Outside, the city lights burned bright, but all the noise and chaos of the world were locked out. Inside, there was only the sound of her soft breathing and the overwhelming warmth that filled my chest. Heiress to Vance Industries. So what? To me, she would always just be Lily. The girl who woke me up by kicking my face, who split her caramel pudding with me, who fell asleep in my arms out of sheer exhaustion, and who whispered that she wanted a strawberry-flavored kind of sweet. My quiet, expressionless, perfect wife.